Okay, we are live, and this is just a test to make sure we've got good sound and no echo. We'll be starting here in about 5 minutes. All right, welcome everybody to LinkedIn Learning Office Hours Live. I'm Drew Boyd, and I am very happy about today because I have a very accomplished and masterful panel of people to help you think about this question. Should I get a career in sales? No, absolutely not. I'm sure you're thinking, me sell? I don't have the right personality. I don't like failure. I'm afraid of rejection. Well, hold on a minute. We're going to show you a different side of that story and try to convince you that time in sales can give you skills that will be with you for the rest of your career. And to help me explain that, I'm going to bring on my panel of guests today, one at a time here. Let me bring in first Dean Carroll. Dean Carroll is an expert in executive coaching, career mentoring, sales training, leadership development, and he is the author of Mastering the Basics, Simple Lessons for Achieving Success in Business. Dean, good to see you, man. How are you?
Great to
All
be
right,
with you,
Jeff
Drew, and good to
Bloomfield.
be with
Jeff is
Lisa and Jeff.
Yep, this should be good. Jeff, good to see you. Jeff Bloomfield, after a long career in sales, he is a sales and leadership coach, and he is the author of Story-Based Selling. Like Dean, both of these gentlemen have 14 courses here on LinkedIn Learning about the sales topic and discipline. And finally, last but not least, is Lisa Earl McLeod. Hey, Lisa, how are you?
Hey, great to
Listen to
see
this.
you.
Good to see you. She is a popular keynote consultant and business author. She is the author of this book, Selling with a Noble Purpose. I love that. Absolutely love that. But guess what? Lisa has 30 courses in the sales and personal development area here on LinkedIn Learning. So between the four of us, you have over 60 courses in what we call the sales library. Hey, if you're thinking about anything in sales, you came to the right place in terms of LinkedIn Learning. You can't find a better place. So, panelists, let's get right into it. Can a sales career help advance someone's career? In other words, what can a person learn in sales, even a short time in sales, that might help them at various aspects of their career? Lisa, do you want to kick us off this morning, ladies first?
Thank you. Well, I think we have to address the elephant in the room. A lot of people don't want to do a stint in sales or even consider it because they think that sales is icky, it's manipulative, and it's about lying. So I see you all out there. Let that go. Here's what sales is really about. It is about finding people that need what you have, leaning into their needs, and figuring out how you can help them. And so a career in sales helps you in two ways. One, if you don't understand why the market is buying your product, it's going to be very hard for you to move up in your company. So just understanding the market dynamics are really important. But the second thing is you find me a career where improving your listening skills, learning compassion, learning empathy, learning to work through obstacles, helping other people is not a valuable tool set. And that's what you learn in sales.
Yeah, for sure. And Jeff, you've spent years in sales at Genetech. You are a pro by every standard. How does that resonate with you? What Lisa just said.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with Lisa. And I think many of us grow up thinking that we have this stereotype of salespeople, right? The salespeople, to her point, are the icky. They're the used car salesperson becomes that the caricature of what that means, and it couldn't be farther from the truth. And I think if you think about what is the purpose of sales, first of all, it's been said years ago that nothing happens in any kind of company until somebody sells something. Obviously, every company lives and dies on their ability to sell something. Sales is a form of communication. Relationships are critical in all aspects of our lives. And I'll say this because this is so important. If I get nothing else out today during this time is if you're out there today and you're worried about what Lisa just spoke about, then you have the wrong mindset. If you have a selling mindset, you've already got the wrong mindset. It's not about selling, it's about serving by solving. And when you can adopt that mindset, it impacts everything you do in a positive way, all of your relationships, period. by putting others first and thinking about how you can serve them by helping them solve problems. Now, does that change the way you feel about sales? It should, because now it's become, to Lisa's point with her book, a very noble cause and a very noble profession.
So, Dean, what are some examples of skills you learn in sales that are translatable? What are the specific things a sales rep will do and learn, even in a short period of time, that's going to help them, 20 years from now?
Well, I think what Lisa and Jeff said is so true. In sales, you just need to be yourself. The stereotypes that people have as salespeople are all wrong, and the skills that we learn are, emotional intelligence, being aware, being curious, asking good questions, and listening to the customer and being a trusted advisor. These are skills that are transferable no matter what job you might have in a corporation. So it's something. My style is different than yours, Drew, different than Lisa's, and different than Jeff's. We all have different personalities and skill sets. So you are able to enhance it in the sales profession and use it in any job you may have in an organization.
Well, this is also my experience. I run into this stereotype, this barrier. I've heard so many people, and you know what they say to me? They say, "Oh, Drew, I could never sell. I don't have your gift of gab." And that to Lisa's point, that's the elephant in the room. Sales stereotype is a myth. But who are we talking about now? What are the types of people you've seen in corporations that we might be appealing to today? What roles are they in? Who could you tell me and look out there and say, Mr., Miss, you really could think about a sales career? Dean, why don't you start us off with that one? What kinds of people do you think are targets, candidates for this?
Again, you can be in any job within an organization, whether you're in IT, sales, marketing, operations, people who are curious. Our job in sales is to solve the needs of our customers, asking their questions, finding their pain points. So it's somebody who is curious, somebody who wants to work with others, someone who is, we assume that you have to be very outgoing. It's really somebody who is caring and wants to listen, wants to be able to solve problems. So if you're in marketing, that's your role. If you're in finance, that is your role. All of these are opportunities to expand your horizons and find a career in sales. It is just being yourself and enhancing the skills that you have.
Lisa, let me ask you to take that question. Who do you think would be the ideal candidate? Who's a participant out there that you think you could convince to get into sales? Try it.
Well, I'm not going to convince you. I'm going to show you the data. So I want to speak to something that you all, that Drew and Jeff have talked about and I want to say, this isn't just our idea that sales is about listening, is about caring. When we did the research for Selling with Noble Purpose, what we found is the top performers in sales were the people who truly wanted to make a difference in the lives of their customers. So that doesn't mean that you have to be an extrovert. You can be an introvert. You can be someone who's even a little shy if you want to go into sales. And so I'll tell you about one person in particular, and it's my husband. My husband went from finance to sales. Earlier in his career, he was a finance guy, and he did a 2-year stint in sales, and he wound up becoming the VP of finance for his company. Why? Because he was the only finance guy you could put in front of a customer, because he had done this 2-year stint in sales. He is an introvert. He is a good listener. He's a studious, buttoned up guy that just wanted to go out and figure out how to get, the right numbers on his spreadsheet. But that level of earnestness won him the trust of customers. So I would say, even if you're in finance, I would say if you're in marketing and product development, you got to do a stint in sales or you're insane. Those two roles in particular. But my husband is living proof. He wound up being the VP of finance. When he was up for the job, he was up against someone else who had an MBA. He did not. And highly educated other guy. And my husband got the job because they said, Bob McLeod's the guy that can get in front of customers. I'm telling you, it's a big deal, people.
Yeah, that is great. And I'm if you notice, I'm putting up comments from people joining us. We're having participants from all over the world, which is really great. Now, if you have a question for our panel, please go ahead and put them in the comments. It helps me if you put the letter Q in front of it, Q colon, so I know. But we're monitoring those. And but Lisa, you said it so brilliantly, right? This is a person who can get in front of a customer, and that skill may seem trivial, but it'll carry with you for years and years and years.
How many CEOs become great CEOs because they have a deep understanding of the customer and they're out in front of customers? Like if you have your eye on senior leadership, stint in sales is almost a
Got to do
requirement.
sales. Jeff, you've taught literally thousands of professionals in the sales area and hundreds of organizations around the world with what you do at Brain Trust. Give us an example of another unlikely candidate. You know, who are those unlikely stories that you've seen go into sales that really crush it, even if it's just for a short period of time? Does anything come to mind? Any examples?
Yeah. No, I think again, back to the myth, I think people think that you have to have a big outgoing personality and be a quote unquote storyteller, which has become almost cliched these days. And the reality is, if you look at the neuroscience behind decision making and building trust, which everyone knows is paramount in any type of relationship, it really comes down to if you understand how people are wired from a biology and a psychology standpoint, your personality is much less relevant. It comes down to authenticity, to Dean's earlier point, and then knowing how to communicate in a way that leads down a path of mutual benefit. Now, think about that. I think, and again, back to Lisa's point, some of the best salespeople that we've interacted with over the past decade would probably consider themselves introverts or even analytical or technical people, but they had what Dean said is they had a curiosity. They weren't trying to convince you. They didn't come across with their personality and their approach as trying to convince you that you should do something, because that's where the resistance and the skepticism comes in our self-preservation. So that personality profile, you might be sitting out there right now saying, well, I'm more of an introvert, or I'm analytical or a technical person, therefore I'm not really going to be great at sales. I would disagree wholeheartedly. Sometimes they are the best salespeople because of the way they come across with curiosity and authenticity doesn't come across as over the top, which a lot of folks do.
Yeah, and I just popped up on the screen here a comment. You know, do you think a person has the talent to make sales and can sell a product? You know, I look at that, and maybe there's some misunderstanding about what a sales training program entails. You know, what do people really experience? What will happen to them? Jeff, why don't you continue on that theme? Can a person from any walk of life be taught sales, and what would you put them through? Tell us like a typical sales program, training program, maybe for a consumer company or pharmaceutical company. Do you have some ideas what that would look like?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we've learned through our work with neuroselling and other research we've done with the PhDs we've worked with is the vast majority of the world has been trained backwards. So a lot of the traditional sales training approaches actually teach you to communicate with the wrong part of the brain, which actually causes you to activate the analytical network, activate self-preservation and all the fight or flight. And we tend to teach people in most traditional sales training how to communicate more about themselves and more about their company and more about their product. Well, guess who doesn't care about any of that? Your customers, your prospects. Mm-hmm. Teaching people how to understand how people buy, and then teaching them how to communicate effectively the right information the right way in the right order, it changes the whole customer conversation. And there's not a lot of sales training out there. If you go back past 10 years, a lot of it's traditional. And it's facts, figures, speeds, feeds, how to communicate, open, probe, position. And there's a lot of stuff that's self-serving. So I would encourage you to look for stuff like Lisa's and Dean's and maybe neuroselling on things where it's about the customer. And it's about building authentic trust and moving into relationship with your prospect that's mutually beneficial, not trying to convince them that what you have is what they need. That's all traditional, outdated, old school sales training that we now know scientifically doesn't work. At least doesn't work as effectively long-term as it could.
Yeah. I have a question here and a comment, and I'm going to put Dean on the screen here. Dean, tell us about your executive coaching of sales. You coach and mentor people in sales, and what are some of the conversations you're having people that are afraid of sales and have these self-doubts? And before we do, let's just pop this on the screen here. This is from Gabriella Ephraim, Dean Carroll, I will never forget you gifted me with your amazing book. Because of your amazing courses and inspiration, I have landed an amazing sales position and couldn't be happier. I look forward to learning more about Lisa's courses. Good. Check them all out, Gabriella. You've got over 60 to choose from. Thank you very much for that comment. And then a question here. Do you think a salesperson has talent to make sales and can sell any product? What goes into your experience? What goes into your work with a person to get them into the sales game?
Well, I am very honest. When I first got into sales, I was scared to death. We all talk about, there are the great sales pros, go through the great training and so forth. But those first sales calls can be very, very difficult because we all fear rejection. We all fear being told no. How do we overcome objections and so forth? And that's why, as Jeff and Lisa said, and you've done, Drew, is the training is so important. Having a good mentor, having a good sales manager, somebody who can help cultivate the skills you were given. We're all different. When I first got into sales, I talk about my initial style was trying to be, I could do this and I could do that, and I just wasn't myself. So what I teach is the line that, like Jeff said, is be authentic. Just be yourself. You learn and you develop and you grow. It's also realizing that the way we sold 10 years ago, 20 years ago, when I first got into sales 30 plus years ago, is a lot different than it is today. It's always learning new skills, and that is so critically important.
So here's a comment, interesting comment from Shafi Kalistar. I was let go today on my first sales job, and I wasn't meeting my quota. Should I continue on the sales career or look for another area? That's kind of the point. What do you say to somebody that has had failure in sales? Is that a sign they should walk away? And Lisa, what would you say at this point to Shalee?
Julie, the first thing I would say is I was fired from a waitress job. So I feel you, honey. I've been there. Maybe yes, maybe no. One of the things that she needs to ask herself is if she didn't hit her number, the question is why? And it could be a couple of different reasons. One, it actually could be she doesn't have a talent for sales. It could also be back to what we were talking about and Dean and Jeff were talking about. It could be she was trained wrong. If she was trained in that old school, I remember people talking about an open probe and a closed probe in sales training. And I remember I was like 25 years old and I was thinking, probe? Like, that doesn't sound like something that I want to do or have done to me in a business interaction. That is just like the whole language was invasive. And so the question that she might want to ask is it because she wasn't good at sales? Or is it because she was trained wrong? And in a lot of cases, we work with sales leaders because that's where the ethos of sales really sits. And so if she was in one of those environments where people were telling her, close it, close it, close it, grab for all the money you can, get from the customer, get from the customer. And that was out of alignment with who she is. And by the way, it's completely out of alignment. You heard about the neuroscience with the way customers want to buy. If she was in that environment, it might not be her, it might be where she was working. So the two things that you want to have to be successful in sales, you got to have a deep belief that what you're selling actually helps people. Whether that's accounting services, software, medical equipment, you got to understand that what you're doing actually what we call a noble purpose. And the second thing you need to be really successful is you need a sales leadership team whose true north is improving life for the customer. Because if you're in this transactional sales leadership team where the true north is just hit your weekly targets, the money matters. It matters a lot. But if that's the true north, you're going to create a very inauthentic transactional environment and your customers will feel it and you won't be successful.
Yeah, here's a nice comment from Brock Godfrey. Love Dean's comment on authenticity, similar to what you said.
Yeah.
It is about values. It really does hit values. What are your recommendations on expressing authenticity through phone or virtual conversations? We also have an interesting question. I'm going to turn this over to Jeff for his comments about how do you express your authenticity, and especially through virtual means. But what do you do, especially if you're selling, sort of what I'll call commodity products or low tech products, where there is a very fast pace, and you want to be an authentic person, and express that. What would you coach somebody that is maybe facing that in the field now, or fearing it as they think about a sales position?
It's a great question, and inside sales roles and phone sales. I mean, the more transactional the communication engagement platform is, the more likely it is for you to communicate transactionally, which actually raises your cortisol, your stress, and the prospect on the other
Mhm.
side of the phone stress. What we like to always advise is, there's two questions there. One is doing this authentically over the phone, and two is about commodities. On the phone interaction is really number one, how much research have you done ahead of time? This applies live, by the way, as well. But many times we're just out there, we're kind of spamming people through the phone as opposed to email. And we don't really have our homework done enough to authentically connect with them and ask them insightful questions about something we already know about them and the things they care about. So on the phone, and people have given lots of lessons on this, is standing when you're talking to people on the phone and smiling. There is a lot that goes into that from a body language and an emotional contagion standpoint. But more than anything, as I tell folks, are you comfortable in your own conversational skin? And you believe that when you pick up the phone and call a stranger, that you want to make a genuine connection with someone, and that you care about them, and you want to show them that you care about them, that will come out in the way you ask questions, in the way you guide the conversation, your tone, and all that matters as well. Quickly on the commodity piece, commodities are tough. And in my question back, if I wanted to know more details here, is many times we think that we're being commoditized, even though we have a differentiated product, because the way we sell it puts us in a commoditized conversation, and we're trying to avoid it. Other times we just sell a commodity. We sell widgets, and widgets are widgets, and it's hard to differentiate. So to the extent that you are a commodity product, only elevates how critical it is that you've got relational capital with your customers, and you've built that relational trust so that they're buying from you in an environment where the product might not look a lot different from other products that they can buy for a nickel cheaper. So that's kind of how I'd wrap that answer around those two parts, Drew.
Yeah, good. Now, I like to keep these live streams to 30 minutes or so, and checking the clock here. And so I want to move on to some advice now. What would we say to participants that are thinking about a sales career, or had never thought about it, but now maybe we planted the seed? What would you advise them to do in their organization to poke around and explore this? Who should they talk to? What should they think about? What's the starting point? Lisa, do you want to kick us off with that one? Let's say it though.
If you're on the fence, if you're ambivalent, don't march yourself down to the chief revenue officer's office and say, hey, I think I might want to try this. Tell me more. If you're on the fence, the first thing you need to do is shadow one or two of the salespeople in your own organization. If they are working on the phone, if they're out in person, give yourself a moment to see what this is really about. And then from there, then when you go talk to a sales manager or someone, you'll have a more informed point of view, because what you're looking for when you shadow a salesperson is that inflection point, that part of the job that you think you might be uniquely good at, and you'll have a better lay of the land. So that would be my two-part approach. One, shadow somebody within your company. Just ask as a favor, hey, do you mind if I, watch what you do for an afternoon? And then find your inflection point that you think you'd be good at, and then approach someone in sales leadership about doing a stint. Clear this with your boss first. I should have added that.
I think that last comment is so important. Letting your boss know that you have an interest in a sales position is not a negative.
Right.
They'll gasp. They'll like, oh, I don't want to lose you, but I want to see you grow as an individual. And they should be thrilled to hear that you have this interest in sales.
A good boss will be.
A good boss.
We are in the great reshuffle, whatever you want to call it. I will also tell you, if you want a sales position and you have a good track record in your company, chances are you can get one, because sales are growing and people need salespeople, and they're probably willing to train you.
And before we sign off, I'm going to ask the question of each one of you: which of your many courses here on LinkedIn Learning would you recommend people start with that if they're even thinking about a sales career? So tough question because the content out there is just great. But I'm going to pin you down to one course. Dean, what would you add to Lisa's comment? Any other pointers you have for people that want to look into a sales stint?
There's a great comment by somebody who posted something. Dan Spooner talked about having a good coach and a good mentor. That is so important no matter what job you have, whether you're in marketing, IT, operations, whatever, especially in sales. Having somebody who can help guide you and teach you new methods and focus on the skills that you have and how you can improve. Having a good coach, not a scorekeeper, as he says. You want somebody who can help train you and develop you. And the course that I always recommend of mine that ties in a lot with what Lisa says and what Jeff says and what you always say, Drew, my course is Prepare Yourself for a Career in Sales. I talk very little about sales. I talk about human skills, authentic, being real, genuine, how to overcome negatives, all the things that are very important no matter what job we have. I see sales as a time with all other types of jobs within our organization, except we are very forward customer facing, the customer first, a buyer first mentality. I have loved my career in sales.
And I love this comment. Speaking of loving things, Jacob Wiesman, I really appreciate this feedback. Thank you all for the advice. He's got that southern drawl like Lisa does, evidently. I've taken some of your courses you all provide and look forward to more. It's hard to write down everything you're all saying though, but God bless. Okay. That's fantastic. And Jeff, do you want to round us out here, and then also I'll ask Lisa too what course she would recommend. But what's your advice for somebody that wants to get in the game, especially from a training area? Should they get trained now? Should they look into it? What's the starting point in your mind?
Yeah, I'm going to take this in reverse because I think that many times at Brain Trust anyway, our best salespeople are actually the coaches and facilitators who have seen our product, if you will, our solution delivered to the clients, and they understand the value. So whatever business you're in, spend time out there with people that are actually delivering your solution to your customers and see how it works and watch it work. And then you're going to be a much more effective salesperson when you go to sell that product. Now, course-wise, if you've never done sales before, I'd recommend Sales Foundations. If you've done some sales and you're looking to go a little deeper, then I'd go to the Science of Sales. It gives you a little more perspective on some of the neuro stuff we've talked about earlier.
Great. Okay. Thank you so much. And Lisa, what's out of the 30 courses you have? God bless you. You're a hardworking person. Which we all knew. What's your single course you'd have them start with? Certainly not finish with. And you've seen some of the comments we've gotten from people. Your courses are extremely
Number one, purpose-driven sales. Purpose-driven sales, by far, go to that course. That will dispel any negativity about sales, and it will show you don't have to choose between making money and making a difference. You can have both.
Well, panel, thank you so much for being with me today. This has been a lot of fun. We're going to do more of this, and for all of you, this LinkedIn Learning office hours is a way for the members of LinkedIn Learning to meet the individual authors that they follow and enjoy so much. So thank you for your participation. Let me bye everybody, and let me tell you a little bit about what's going on next week. We also have a world expert, and next week is all about getting inside the mind of your customer. We're going to look into the topic of consumer behavior. And I'm going to be interviewing Dr. Frank Kartus, the world-leading consumer psychologist, a good friend and colleague of mine. And we'll be talking about what goes on in a customer's mind that you need to know. And that is it today for LinkedIn Live Office Hours. We'll see you next Tuesday at 11 a.m. Eastern. Have a great week. Bye-bye.